Welcome to the closing plenary for day 2 of the 2020 ESHIP Summit. Shout out to Louisa Shepard and the team at the Epicenter and Memphis for that fantastic video. I hope for all of you this 2-day experience so far has been impactful and fun. If you've joined us before, I'm really happy to see you again. And for those of you who are here for the first time, I want you to know that you've already added a lot of value to our community and you've brought a lot of new energy. Now, if you're out there and maybe this is your first time at the summit and you're not quite sure if you belong here, let me just say this. If you found the conversations, the small group sessions, the breakout sessions, if they piqued your interest, if they've caught your attention, or even they've energized you, then you are in the right place and you belong here. Ecosystem building isn't about fancy titles. It's about creating an environment of collaboration it's about creating an environment of human engagement, so collaboration across an entire community. Anyone can build that type of collaboration. Anyone can be an ecosystem builder, but you really just have to care enough to act. I'd really like to welcome you all to the ESHIP Summit community. I'd like to invite Faye and Dell, who we've met before, back into the conversation. As you will recall, Faye helped us co-host a session yesterday and Dell this morning. Faye and Dell, how are y'all doing? Are you, have you had any rest? We've been running around, actually zooming around. We've all been sitting in the same place, but it feels like we've been in a bunch of different locations. I have one question, give you both a chance to answer it. What's been the highlight for you, or one highlight for you of this week? And what's one thing you're going to take away? Faye, I'm going to let you start.
Yeah, so I'll say the resource directory for me, learning how organizations are pivoting in this time, like Co-Starters, who is sort of leaning into directly supporting entrepreneurs impacted by COVID with their Restart program, and Startup Champions Network, who has moved from in-person summits to an online academy for ecosystem builders. So I'm excited about how we're serving in this time.
What's going to be one takeaway for you from the summit, Faye? Or new insight, maybe?
Yeah, I think that as an ecosystem building feel, what I'm feeling the last couple of days is that we have the collective heart, ideas, will, and opportunity to lead systemic change for entrepreneurs. We really do, and now we just have to take the action.
Dell, turning it your way, you kept us on track this morning through an incredibly rich conversation. There was a lot there. I know you hosted a couple other sessions. What's one highlight and what's one thing you're going to take away from the first 2 days of the 2020 ESHIP Summit?
I think the highlight for me is just seeing all the new individuals that are coming into the space that are saying, you know, we recognize this is a valuable strategy that is something that can transform the lives of the people in our communities and make our nations a better place. And the willingness of the more mature ecosystem builders to really reach back and share and exchange knowledge and not put up walls and silos. You know, Andy, I have a saying that for every gray in my beard, an ecosystem builder is born. And so if we go back to the 4 or 5 years since we started doing this ecosystem-based conferences, you can see I got a whole lot of grays in my beard right now. The one takeaway that I would say is the biggest takeaway for me is just that the field is growing. The field is growing not just in terms of the number of individuals willing to participate in it, but in terms of its infrastructure, the professional practice, the way that we're considering, you know, building out things in the field, including diversity, inclusion, formal types of structures, education, training. And I'm just so proud of everybody, including yourself, Kaufman, and everybody that's participating. And I'm proud to be part of this group.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think for me, the same experience of talking to a lot of new people who are here for the first time. And what I love about talking to folks is maybe they didn't identify as an ecosystem builder, but when you hear about what they're doing, you're like, well, yeah, that's collaboration, that's culture building. You're doing it with a focus on equity and inclusion. It's like the Kaufman Foundation we're not creating anything new, we're simply shining a light on an emergent trend that's happening not just in the United States but around the world. And it's so fun to meet all the new people who suddenly, I hope, identify with the community of folks that have been gathering for the last 4 years and really feel like they've found peers or even more peers that they can connect with. So that's been fantastic. Well, I just want to thank you both for your time and your energy, and particularly your leadership across this emerging field. It's not always easy to sort of be pioneers, to push forth when there's seeming barriers in your way. And thank you for all the work that you do and for making the ESHIP Summit stay on track and keep the conversations interesting. We'll catch you later on for one of our campfires, but I just want to thank you both for being here.
Thanks, Sandy. Been a pleasure.
So now I want to ask you, same question. What's one thing that you'll take away from the first 2 days of the ESHIP Summit? As you have probably already done, share it in the chat. We've generated so much chat content, it's actually shaken the internet in the building that I'm broadcasting from. So let's go ahead and break the internet now. You could also share that on Twitter. So the hashtag is ESHIP Summit. And maybe we could try to trend nationally if right now everyone gets your Twitter out and type the hashtag ESHIP Summit, and then write one thing I'm taking away from the ESHIP Summit, and then complete the sentence on your Twitters. Let's see if we can at least trend in a national, maybe even a global way. Y'all are very good with your internets. All right. Throughout the rest of this closing session, I want to share with you a few ideas and opportunities of how you can dig a little deeper into this stuff. There's no way we could cover it all in 2 days of this particular event. But I hope you've experienced stories and powerful ways to better understand entrepreneurial ecosystem building. But because this stuff is new and emerging, because there's not a clear playbook on how to do the work, what I know is the fastest way to learn how to do this stuff is to learn from others. So there are 2 new initiatives I want to share with you that are highlighting entrepreneurial ecosystem building stories. I know you all know the power of stories to help you sort of make sense of all the work that you're doing. So the first I want to point you to is the Keystone podcast, which actually grew out of the past ESHIP Summit works. The hosts of the Keystone podcast, Yuval Yarden and Charlton Cunningham, tell stories of ecosystem builders. This past seasons include interviews with people you've met this week, including Melissa Bradley, Shelley Bell, Brad Feld, and others. And as you saw in the graphic, their URL is actually ecosystem.builder. Second, I want to encourage you to check out a growing collection of stories on ecosystembuilderhub.com, which is also another initiative that has grown out of past ESHIP summits. It's a clearinghouse of ecosystem building stories, resources, and knowledge. Throughout this event, you've seen a collaborative initiative hosted at Ecosystem Builder Hub called the Unsung Heroes Campaign. This campaign features many of you who've joined us at this summit and past summits. And I sat down with the project's founders, Jeff Bennett, Annika Horn, and Jess Edwards. It's a really fantastic project to shine a light on the growing community of entrepreneurial ecosystem builders out there in the world. Let's watch this clip and learn a little bit more about the project.
For the last year, Annika Horn, Jess Edwards, and I have been running the Unsung Heroes of Ecosystem Building campaign. Annika, can you tell us a little bit about that campaign and why we started it?
Absolutely. As most of you know, ecosystem building is a job that really takes place behind the scenes. And our goal with this campaign was to, number one, hold up a mirror to ecosystem builders themselves, to demonstrate and remind them how much value they're creating in their community. But also, number two, to demonstrate to the community how much benefit these ecosystem builders are bringing to entrepreneurs in a certain neighborhood or area. And then number three, we were really hoping to raise the profile of their work among external stakeholders who may not even be aware of the work of these ecosystem builders. So all in all, it came down to helping ecosystem builders understand that they're not alone in the work that they're doing and the experiences they're having. And also through telling their stories, we were hoping to uncover that shared identity and really build a little bit more camaraderie around ecosystem building. And with that, Jeff, can you tell us a little bit more about how we executed on this campaign?
Sure. So we had no budget, so we decided to crowdsource this. So we sent out a call for nominations using a Google form for people to collect nominations of ecosystem builders to nominate an ecosystem builder they think exemplified the work. In the end, we got 70 nominations, and 40 of those responded to our interview questions. And so basically, we put together every 4 or 5 weeks a series of articles featuring those ecosystem builders along with a summary post, and then shared that and promoted it through our social media channels. And in the end, we published nearly 50 articles, and we've received over 5,700 page views so far. So it's been really impactful, we think. Jess, talk a little bit about the takeaways and lessons learned from this.
Sure, thanks, Jeff. So doing this project, we had some really big kind of indicators of the work we were doing was somewhat important. The first one, for the most part, it goes without saying, ecosystem builders will not nominate themselves and highlight the work that they're doing. They're always focused on those startups and entrepreneurs. So we really do need all of you to identify and nominate your fellow colleagues and your fellow ecosystem builders. This work cannot go unsung. It's really important to move this field forward. The second one, that was a big takeaway for the team, was we aim to be intentionally inclusive with this project. However, in our opinion, we did fall a bit short of that goal. And the lesson learned was we have to put extra time and effort into finding new channels or networks of networks to reach those goals of making sure we can increase nominations for communities of color. It's really important. And third, based on our data collection, the communities came out in droves to nominate and celebrate their ecosystem builders. This really validated that there is initial outside support, awareness, and recognition for ecosystem building, which is a great sign. So with all of that being said, anyone interested in learning more about the Unsung project, please head over to ecosystembuilderhub.com, and we look forward to connecting with you there. Thank you so much.
You can also learn more about that program and find a link to the images up in the fun menu if you're inside of our conference app. So finally, there is a growing collection of books out there where you can learn, grow, and develop your skills as an ecosystem builder. I wanted to share with you a couple books that have come up over the last couple days that I would recommend. So the first is Beyond Collisions, Building Your Entrepreneurial Infrastructure by Maria Myers, who we heard from yesterday, and Kate Hodel. Ed Morrison talked about his book, Strategic Doing, 10 Skills for Agile Leadership. That's another great book that I would encourage people picking up if you enjoyed Ed's session. One that was mentioned earlier by Rachel when we were talking about systems leadership, one of my personal favorites is Emergent Strategies, Shaping Change, Changing Worlds by Adrienne Marie Brown. We also heard from Brad Feld this morning with his book, The Startup Community Way, Evolving an Entrepreneurial Ecosystem, that he co-wrote with Ian Hathaway. And finally, another book that I want to highlight, Know Your Price, Valuing Black Lives and Property in America's Black Cities, by Andre Perry at the Brookings Institute. While this book wasn't directly spoken about at the ESHIP Summit by our speakers, Andre is actually keynoting tomorrow the Kauffman Foundation's Mayor's Conference on Entrepreneurship, which will be beginning in this virtual space, which is an annual conference you can learn more about at mayorsconference.kauffman.org. If you want to know which mayors are at the Mayor's Conference, you can actually go up to the fun menu. We've got a map up there. I'm extremely excited right now at this moment to share with you a bit of a surprise. So, if you take a look under your seat, you will find a copy of one of those books. Okay, I'm kidding. But did you actually look? Our founder, Ewing Marion Kauffman, was a passionate advocate for education and entrepreneurship. So on his behalf, the Kauffman Foundation is happy to provide you, everyone who was registered officially for the conference, one of these books of your choice as a way to help propel you along your learning journey. I'm going to send you an email later this week with more details. While we're at it, let's crowdsource something. If there's another book that you heard about during the summit or that you think would be great for leaders in this present moment, go ahead and share that book in the chat. You can throw in a link if you want, but share those knowledge and resources with each other. So speaking of free things, I do want to highlight a funding opportunity from the U.S. Small Business Administration. Let's watch this clip. This was featured in a session inside of the Resource Expo, but it's particularly of interest, I think, for you.
Hello, I'm Brittany.
Hi, I'm Jennifer.
And we are with the U.S. Small Business Administration.
But we're here representing a whole group of agencies that support innovators that take research from ideas in a lab to products and companies that improve our lives. To get the most innovative solutions, we need to build a truly inclusive ecosystem.
So we're launching the Lab to Market Inclusive Innovation Ecosystem Prize Competition for ecosystem builders with prizes to recognize 3 categories. 1, the Super Connector, who has successfully included networks of underserved communities in the R&D innovation ecosystem.
2, the Ecosystem Responder, for timely and effective responses to the pandemic environment.
And 3, the Visionary, for the most creative and actionable ideas related to improving and creating a more inclusive R&D innovation ecosystem.
Find out more at sbir.gov/L2M.
Thank you, and we look forward to building this ecosystem with you.
If someone could throw that URL in the chat, that'd be really helpful. Thank you. In addition to stories and books, I know you all understand the value of live events because, well, you're here. So I want to invite up one more time Faye Horwit, who we just were chatting with, Kristen Lutz, who we met earlier, the Executive Director of the Startup Champions Network, and then Cecilia Wessinger, who is one of our ESHIP community activators, to tell you about a project that they've been working on. Cecilia, I think I'm turning it over to you.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Andy. So in March, before most of the US went into quarantine, a couple of ecosystem builders, a group of ecosystem builders convened in San Antonio at the Startup Champions Spring Summit. As we prepared to go back to our respective communities, we recognized the need to be able to share what we were seeing across the country regarding COVID-19 responses. We understand that so many individuals, organizations, and governments working in service of their respective communities, there were a lot of initiatives out there. Often there are silos created, whether on purpose or unintentionally, and silos aren't necessarily a bad thing, although they get a really bad rap. It's where we focus to get things done. The problem is the communication between the silos, and that inhibits progress and collaboration. They make it hard to build trust and relationships, which we talked about a lot today. It was important to have information housed in an easily accessible platform, centralized, open source, so we could leverage our networks and learn from each other, share best practices, and collaborate, because we're all in this, weathering the storm together. David Ponrash, Eric Renz-Whitmore, and I, with the help of Jake Hammond, created the Ecosystems Unite Facebook page. And it served as a repository for entrepreneurial ecosystem builders to post resources in support of entrepreneurs and small businesses that are specific to the pandemic. Since that Facebook group started, we added over 444 members. We see good ideas coming from everywhere and people contributing in a myriad of ways to support local communities and advance this field of work and respond to this pandemic crisis. We know that we can do more when we work together, and will only meet tough challenges with more voices and more brain power. It's the magic of interdependencies. Kristen?
Thanks, Cecilia, and thanks, Andy and Faye and everybody. I've been having a great eShip experience. I know you have, and like me, it must mean that you're a lifelong learner. And we know that events like Startup Champions Network Summit, like this amazing eShip Summit, are great opportunities to convene and learn from each other. And there are other wonderful organizations hosting events this fall that will be of interest to you as entrepreneurial ecosystem builders. And these events are for everyone. And whether you serve directly with entrepreneurs, work at a systems level, focus on diversity or inclusion, if you're an economic developer, grassroots champion, educator, student, anyone who's really passionate about this work, we're helping you, hopefully, by gathering a list in what you might call a collaborative event series, so that you can see all of them in a centralized, easily to access and open source platform to sign up for these. And we call this series Ecosystems Unite. And here's this quick list of events will be up on the website, ecosystemsunite.us. So hopefully some handy typer can put that link into the chat as well for us. And we know that even though events are amazing and they help us get to know each other and learn, ecosystem building is done 360 plus other days a year as well. So in order to continue to foster an environment of trust and collaboration, this group will also be exploring more ways that ecosystems and ecosystem builders can unite to advance this movement. And we'll be doing that this fall, hopefully beyond, and hopefully all of you will join us in this effort. And we look forward to being with you, learning with you and from you, and teaching each other at these events. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Faye, Cecilia, and Kristen. Faye, any final words on this event or this series? I think it's fantastic work to get a bunch of organizations, almost a dozen. How many organizations? I think it's about a dozen organizations you all have put together this list. I'll share that with everyone via email later this week. Also, obviously, you can check out the website. Thank you very much again for joining us.
Thank you, Andy.
There's been a few mentions about Global Entrepreneurship Week throughout this week, and it's actually one of the last events in the Ecosystems Unite event series. If you want to follow in the footsteps of Albuquerque, if you tuned in yesterday, and get your community involved in global entrepreneurship, I've got good news for you, and that's GEW is coming up November 16th to the 22nd, and you can still get your community involved. Earlier this week, I sat down with the folks at the Global Entrepreneurship Network who host GEW to learn more. I've got a quick clip to share with you. Let's roll that. Jonathan, Ellen, thanks for joining us at the ESHIP Summit. Now, Jonathan, you're the founder and president of the Global Entrepreneurship Network, or GEN. Tell us what that is.
Well, we're really doing ecosystem building on a worldwide scale. The Global Entrepreneurship Network operates in almost every economy in the world. And we're really about making it possible for anyone, anywhere to start or scale a firm. So we're about what are the things we need to do to better enable all of the ecosystem actors, whether they're entrepreneurial support organizations or policymakers, or of course, the entrepreneurs themselves.
Ellen, you are the director of U.S. ecosystem programs at the Global Entrepreneurship Network. So you help activate people across the United States around Global Entrepreneurship Week, among other programs that you support. Tell us about Global Entrepreneurship Week in the United States. What does that look like?
Sure. Well, we are certainly trying to activate, as Jonathan said, these communities around the nation and shine a spotlight on what they're doing to support entrepreneurship. And during Global Entrepreneurship Week, we want them to host activities and events that provide connections and resources to anyone at any stage of their entrepreneurial journey. We know about the big entrepreneurship hubs, but we know there's great things happening in the middle of the country, in the South, et cetera, and we really want those to be included as part of this global celebration.
If someone wanted to get involved in global entrepreneurship to connect their community, what are the actions they actually need to take?
Sure. Well, first they should go to gewusa.co and check out the resources we have there. You can register your activity there as part of the celebration. You have branding resources there as well. And if you're looking for some inspiration on activities to plan, we have an idea bank and some signature activities that can really spark your creativity in terms of getting an activity off the ground in your community.
Great. And Ellen, you've actually been hanging out at the Resource Expo throughout the ESHIP Summit, and there's information there around Global Entrepreneurship Week, and you're actually taking questions through our virtual booth as well. So thank you so much for doing that. Jonathan, I know Global Entrepreneurship Week is just one program of GEN. What else do you have coming up that people should know about?
One of the things I'll point to is that we're building up to a crescendo. Every March, we hold something called the Global Entrepreneurship Congress, and it's really a dream for ecosystem builders because what we do is we bring the ecosystem builders from every country in the world together in one location, and we have 3 or 4 days together sharing notes, building community, and as I said earlier, trying to do something on a global scale. But I really, really want to challenge all of my colleagues. I've been to every ESHIP summit and being proud to be associated with Kaufman for 12 or 13 years now. And I know many of you in this community, but we really challenge you to partner with us in working out how do we reach more interested citizens. So I really, really hope that all of you will sign up. We hope that that's something that will allow you to potentially build your knowledge and your community and your network around learning with, as we've done this week, other ecosystem builders.
Jonathan, Ellen, thank you very much for your time and your continued leadership and for joining us at the ESHIP Summit.
Thanks for having us.
The final event I want to highlight is actually the third day of this event. I hope you're considering attending day 3 of the ESHIP Summit, where we're inviting folks who are interested in contributing to and helping to build the growing professional field of entrepreneurial systems. You'll get a chance to meet Faye, Kristen, Cecilia, and many other folks. A lot of the projects we heard earlier actually came out of some of that activity. Our experience over the last 2 days, just to help you understand, is really about the focus in how we work in the field or in the growing field of ecosystem building, which explores the work we do to create supportive environments for entrepreneurs, right? Day 3 is about working on the field, which is addressing the overarching questions of how do we create a more supportive environment for ecosystem builders. So we've got many passionate advocates. You've just met a number of them in this session. But I also want to send a shout out to a group that has been working and collaborating throughout the year to support these efforts, the ESHIP Goal Champions. The ESHIP Goal Champions were identified by the community, the ESHIP Summit community, and nominated as individuals who demonstrated ongoing efforts to move the professional field forward. A lot of folks are focused in their local community, and these folks have been identified because they're also picking their head up and working on the whole field. So these Goal Champions serve as ambassadors, cheerleaders, and passionate advocates for this field, and they are who I look to for really great examples of servant leadership. They meet regularly, provide leadership, host virtual meetings and meetups, and support efforts like the ESHIP Summits each and every year. I know you don't maybe know all of these folks, but maybe you know one of them. So if you could jump out in the chat and give a shout out to your favorite ESHIP Goal Champion, that would be great. I also would like to personally thank Cecilia Wessinger and Christine Lai, who've served for the last 2 years as ESHIP Goal Community Activators, helping to get the community connected. I know many of you know them. Please send a shout out to Cecilia and Christine, and then also thank a Goal Champion if you have the opportunity to do that through the rest of this event. So this brings us to our final opportunity, which is action. So hopefully through the last 2 days you've been inspired, you've seen new ideas, you've met new people, but how are you going to turn that into action, right, in your community? And that could be as simple as taking an entrepreneur to lunch. It could be learning more about the history of race and gender in America and how it interacts with our economies and our communities. Or maybe it's starting a conversation with a potential collaborator outside the walls of your organization. Maybe it's becoming part of GEW. Or launch a new initiative, maybe a collaborative initiative or program in your community. In the end, we have to think like entrepreneurs. We are entrepreneurs because good ecosystem builders have a bias towards action. Do something, right? So as we wrap up this plenary, I want you to sort of be thinking about what is your action that you're going to take after being here and joining us over these last 2 days. As we wrap up this plenary, and as you think about that, I want to just give you one more invite. So after this session wraps, very shortly after this session wraps, we're going to invite you to the final session of day 2 of the ESHIP Summit, which is another campfire, which, as you recall, are small group conversations designed to create a shared experience for you to meet new people and connect over shared interests, just like a campfire, except there's no campfire. This particular campfire is really important because we're going to put you in small groups with people that live in your region to talk about what you're thinking about after 2 days of the summit and perhaps even explore ways that you might work together. So that campfire will immediately follow the conclusion of this session, and you need to navigate back to the full summit agenda, and then you need to find the campfire, final campfire agenda item, and then navigate into there, and there's a link and there's some geographic regions, and pick the region that you're working in. All right, that brings us pretty close to the end, but I have one more poll question. So I want to hear from you. Gave you a minute and a half to think about it, but what action will you commit to towards building a more inclusive and sustainable entrepreneurial ecosystem in your community? Drop your answers in the chat. Remember, not like your teacher, but remember, good goals are specific, actionable, and they have a deadline. So what action are you going to take that's specific, actionable, and has a deadline? I also want you to remember what Philip said at the beginning. Philip said, understand how much you mean to this moment. Understand that we all mean a lot collectively to each other. You are brilliant. Don't let others tell you otherwise. I wrote those down because those were very powerful words. So consider that as you're making your commitment in the chat. So to bring it back around, I would like to actually bring back Philip to join into the conversation. If you didn't meet him earlier, he's my colleague, he's my collaborator, and he's my boss, the Vice President of Entrepreneurship, who's going to join us here. Philip, how you doing? It's been a lot of activity, fun, people over the last 2 days. Good to have. We've been passing each other quickly, but it's good to see you.
Thank you. Good to be back. Fired up.
So
everybody.
over the last 2 days, you had a chance to talk with a lot of people. Do you have any parting wisdom or thoughts to share as you've processed the experience over the last 2 days?
Hard to top the last half hour of everything in 2 days. But I was thinking back to what I shared in April when we were just realizing the effects of the impact of this pandemic. And that was on interdependence, that we have to all think in interdependent ways. And we need to get everyone involved, everyone in the game, if we're going to come out of this moment and this period better. And if we're going to change systems, because this is about systems change. And so everyone's got to be seen as viable. Everyone has to be included. And that includes, folks that have traditionally been left behind and haven't had a seat at the table. It's important to them, but it's important to all of us, because I mentioned about this being about economic viability and sustainability. And so, if we're going to do this work and do it, we've got to do it collectively and get those that have resources that may not know they can make a difference into the game to make a difference. And so I know we talked a lot about inclusion, and the reason why we did is because ecosystems fundamentally are about inclusion, and so they come together. And at the end of the day, this is about ecosystem building is economic development, and vice versa. So, Andy, thanks for echoing those words. I agree. I'll say it again. Know what you mean to this moment. It's tough right now. This is tough stuff. This is tough work, but we can all do it together. And don't underestimate yourself, or let anyone underestimate you.
Thank you, Philip. Let's go back. I want to wrap up the entire session actually by going back, because I loved your video. Let's go back to Philip's message at the beginning of the pandemic. This was actually shot in April. You have to remember, think back to the moment in April when we were still trying to understand what this pandemic was. I want to watch that video to take us out, and then after that's done, immediately following this, we're actually going to shift right into the campfires, which will give you an opportunity to connect and have a chat. You can grab a drink if you want, have a chat with folks as we close the second day of the ESHIP Summit. Let's go ahead and roll that video and take us out.
When we all come together and work together, there isn't anything that we cannot achieve. And our founder, Ewing Marion Kaufman, really believed in that, and it's part of a fabric of our foundation. And, when I look back at periods of hope for our country, we know what we can aspire to. And if we keep that energy and understand that North Star, we can make sure that we get through any crisis. This pandemic is a reminder of how interconnected we really are and how interdependent we really are. And my hope is that we will remember the way that we're coming together now to help one another. Our rhythms as a nation have been thrown off, and as a world to a large degree. This moment in time is very, very important for small business and for entrepreneurs. There are organizations across Kansas City and across the nation that are coming together in communities to pool funding to help entrepreneurs, to get them through this period. So how can everyone be a participant in that and have an equitable shot at getting their fair share? So it isn't about everyone has to win the same way. It's whatever your idea is or what you want to achieve in life, your dream is having an equitable shot at having the resources, the opportunity, being seen as viable enough for investment, for resources, for support. This is very, very large. This is a very, very large hit to our economy. Obviously, it can't be changed or healed overnight, but it can, with everyone coming together and doing their part, get better as we move along. My idea is a call for interdependence. So it's a call for unity. It's a call for connection. The independence part is taking ownership of our ideas, of our responsibilities, and being accountable for those and being the best we can be in our empowerment. Interdependency is once we have our independence solid and our accountability, our ownership, and doing the best that we can, it's how can I then engage with others for the whole. That type of connection is really just going to pave the way for our future when technology is not going away. The speed of things may not be going away. Pandemics may come and go. How do we as people be resilient through all of that and make sure that our economies, our educational institutions, everything is as beneficial for as many people as possible?